Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
And this sort of dovetails into that a parent has written in and said that their son's sensory issues is around the Happy Birthday song. And that they don't know why that's the case, but when they're in a restaurant and if somebody starts singing it in a restaurant, he will repeatedly say, damn it, and say, no, 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 every time, and that, that please help with that. But it's kind of, they're both very different. One, I don't want to go outside of the house, and the other, when this thing happens. But I would assume that cognitive behavioral therapy would be a path for both of those things, yes?
Yeah, or just behavioral therapy, depending on the age and functioning of the child. So, and they could have been, those two things could be related or not. In other words,
these are two different kids, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. But like, for instance, the whole concept of, social anxiety. Let's talk about social anxiety for a minute. But the concept of social anxiety could have been initiated by a sensory overload.
Yeah.
So like you become socially anxious for many different reasons, many different reasons. And sometimes I have children who have autism, and they have also been given a diagnosis of social anxiety. And I usually am not necessarily in agreement with that. It depends. Sometimes I am. I have had adults who have both diagnoses for sure. But the issue is that with autism, it is pervasive. It's pervasive, and it's broader than social anxiety. Social anxiety is kind of a pretty, I want to say, nuanced type of diagnosis. You get social anxiety because it has to do with anxiety around people, because somehow you feel that those people are judging you in a way that will make you feel worse about yourself. Social anxiety is very connected to performance anxiety. It has to do with, I think I'm going to fail and be judged by society. Now, just think about what I just said. That's a very high-level thing, right? It's an extremely high-level thing to be able to think in second or third-level theory of mind. I am worried about what other people will think about me. That's an intense perspective-taking skill. A lot of our kids don't have that level of perspective-taking. They just have not yet developed it. And you know this because at an earlier age, sometimes they don't have embarrassment about certain things. So to say that they have social anxiety is not necessarily the case. Now, they may have anxiety about environmental stimuli. For instance, the sound of human voices, the sound of a buzzer, the sound of an elevator, the sound of street cars. And that is set absolutely, I've seen that 100 times with my kids, where like there's something in the environment that doesn't bother us, so we don't even recognize it, and it is extremely, excruciatingly painful for the child, and therefore he starts to self-isolate and not want to deal with that, right? In this particular child where we're talking about, he stays at home all the time, he doesn't want to leave. I mean, part of that is because home is where the device is, right? And it's comfortable, and he sits there and so on. And I guarantee you, when you go out, he gets less of the device and probably a little bit more of stuff that is uncomfortable for him.
And unpredictable.
And unpredictable, absolutely. But whatever the cause may be, and it could be cognitive behavior therapy exercises, or it could be just behavioral exercises like systematic desensitization, where you gradually shape your own behavior or the child's behavior by progressively getting the child acclimated to those situations that are harmful or difficult for the child. So, let's just step outside for 2 seconds, and great, we're going to reward you and bring you back in, or let's do it now for 5 seconds, and let's do it now for 30 seconds, and so on and so forth. Or it could be with systematic desensitization, you go outside and then you pair that with relaxation or thoughts of things that are calming so that you gradually can tolerate more and more of the thing that is bothering you, whatever it may be, a phobia or a sound or a social anxiety, whatever it may be. But it is important to deal with it, is what I'm trying to say. I cannot tell you the number of people that I have met who had agoraphobia, which is really the anxiety of going outside your home.
Yep.
And it's debilitating.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a good life. You do not want that life because your anxieties become higher and higher the more you spend time in the home. It's a really bad cycle, and you start to just feel more and more anxious, and then gradually you develop obsessive compulsive behaviors in the home, and it just becomes debilitating. So, you know, wherever you are, if you're not able to be a part of society, you need ways to start practicing that so that you can get there.
But I think, you know, having something worthwhile, really worthwhile to leave the house.
It's all about reward and reinforcers.
And in terms of the happy birthday, I do want to acknowledge that they said that the dad, who is now deceased, would spank the individual for saying the no, no, no around the birthday song being played in a restaurant. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I do want to say that, you know, I think most people are trying to do the best that they can, but there's been a great deal of stuff that's been misunderstood over the years.
Yes.
And that when in my era, if somebody behaved in a way that was not what was expected, we got spanked. In my family, we got spanked. I love the phrase that Maya Angelou always would say is that when we knew better, we did better, right? And I hope that people that are watching this show acknowledge that now we know that when somebody is having a sensory reaction to something, that we would not do any kind of a thing that would be add on to the stress of that.
Yes.
But if somebody didn't know that at a time and a place, then, you know, I think that's sad, and that's unfortunate for that individual, because they have to deal with the repercussions of that, knowing that they were hit as a result of that. And I would rather focus my attention on helping that individual than the recriminations of the person in the past, because I'm sure that they meant well.
Yep.
I got spanked, and I know that my mother loved me and my dad loved me, but that was what they thought was acceptable.
Yep.
And it wasn't helpful when I got spanked, but spanking someone for having a reaction to a sensory thing, I believe, is not helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, spanking in general is not a good solution.
Right.
And we know this now. And we know that when you do any kind of punitive type of behavior, it doesn't really have an effect for a long term. It just, instead it produces this type of traumatic result. Now, it is possible that, you know, again, it goes back to kind of not knowing. You know how a lot of children, when they're very young, you take them to the mall and they will go and you're trying to do something very good and you take them to Santa, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they will scream and cry and they're terrified. And you've no idea why. And you wonder, is it the look of this old man? Is it just the fact that they're sitting on the lap of a creepy old guy they don't know? Is it his beard? Is it the sound? Is it the
smell? Sometimes the costume doesn't smell good.
What is it? But it is terrifying for the child, right? Now, we don't force our kids. We just keep taking them back. And eventually our kids look around and they see other kids. That's a very big part of it. And they realize, oh, this is supposed to be something fun. It's still scary.
Yeah.
But when our child finally realizes that the toy I tell this guy is what I'm going to get, then it becomes a fun thing.
Right.
And they overcome it, right? And so it's interesting that we replace that fear with that reinforcer, which is like this scary dude is actually a means for me to get the thing I want, right? But so with the individual who might be afraid of happy birthday song, let's say, it's really important to look back and say, and by the way, I want to say a lot of times our kids as adults can actually explain to us
Right.
what is causing that trauma. They can go back and tell you what is the fearful stimulus in there. And it's
And this
important.
individual is 25 now.
And if this individual can talk about it, I would just ask and say, what is it that's causing you? And I would give the individual, and this is really key, I think, you know, with individuals on the spectrum, when you get to a point where you are functioning very well in society and there are certain things that bother you, then you can decide as well, and you can take control over the situation. And as Shannon said earlier, she said, I had developed this fear of leaving my house, and I would only come to the clinic when I had to, and then I forced myself gradually with the help of cognitive behavior therapy, and I got over it. Okay. And what's the difference there? The difference is she made a conscious decision to get help and to improve upon a thing that was causing some level of disability for her, and she did it. Okay. We do this in our own lives all the time, you guys. We do diets. We make a decision that I want to lose a certain amount of weight, and then we adhere to very strict rules about it. We do exercise. We make a conscious decision that we want to improve a certain portion of our lives. I want to remind myself how to be fluent in French again. I force myself to take classes, etc. Right?
Right.
So this individual, if they are able to, can talk about what caused it, this trauma to begin with, and they can take control. And the reason I want to talk about this is that a lot of times having control is the issue. When someone suddenly bursts out and starts singing behind you, that you don't have control over that. That in itself could be the traumatic event. Yeah. So ask the individual, is it the sound that's bothering you? Is it the fire? Is it the fact that everybody loudly claps? Are you afraid of what will happen with the cake? What is it about? Is it perhaps the fact that you have no control over this loud thing? What is it? And then let's help you cope with that, because we don't always have control, right? And sometimes we need to be able to just do other things that help us cope with it.
Yeah. What do you think about, because we've had people on before talking about recording noises. Like, I remember there was a kiddo who...
We used to do this all the time.
Right.
Like record the sound.
Yeah.
And then give the individual the ability to play it and get acclimated to it. 100%. That's one way to go. But it depends, again, like what is the stimulus that is causing, and particularly with an individual who can probably quite elaborately articulate, it would be very interesting to know.
Absolutely. I love that.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.